And I think also Mel's problem probably would be too much empathy
Yeah.
of like trying to find a balance between being really caring and not slowing down as a doctor.
Well, hello, my name is Russ Milheim. Thank you for talking to me today about the Pit,
Thanks for having me.
of course. I've seen the first 11 episodes of the show, and I've really, really enjoyed it so far. You are wonderful in it. My first question is just, Dr. King is such a gentle, lovable soul. Personally, for you, kind of what was the biggest challenge of playing King, who is also seemingly neurodivergent, and bringing her to life in an organic, respectful, and believable way?
I think the biggest challenge was competence versus anxiety of like how to show anxiety, but also I'm like, Mel's still a good doctor, which is tough because you automatically want to shake and do all sorts of like visual things. You're like, well, I would suck as a doctor if I did that.
Yeah.
So trying to find the balance in between.
Dr. King is also notably great at connecting with patients throughout the series. Uh, what do you think is kind of for her? What is that secret element, and how does she approach things in a different way that kind of the rest of the doctors simply don't? That kind of makes Dr. King connect quicker and easier to some of these patients that some of the others kind of find problematic in a way.
I think Dr. King, I think she leads with her heart.
Hmm.
Everyone else leads with their head, and I think she leads with her heart. With her head, I mean, like close second, but I think seeing the pain is what's hardest for Mel. Uh, and so that's definitely really tough in an emergency room. And it's not as much physical pain as much as it is emotional pain. And I think that's when Mel can click in with different patients or families of patients and just kind of, you know, live in that. And I think also Mel's problem probably would be too much empathy
Yeah.
of like trying to find a balance between being really caring and not slowing down as a doctor.
Dr. King has, like everyone, obviously a personal life, but with the show, we don't get to see too much of it. But it is hinted at throughout these episodes. Can you kind of help paint a clearer picture of kind of what her personal life looks like outside of the walls of that hospital?
Yeah, it's something that it's shared that Mel's mom has died, but actually her dad's dead too. And so Mel's actually been the sole caregiver of her sister for a lot longer than is hinted in the show.
Hmm.
And so it's been years and years through medical school, all throughout having both lives of doctor and sister. And I think because of that, Mel never got to be with people her own age and never got to, hang out. And I think it's also seeing Mel, especially in the first nine-ish episodes, trying desperately to make friends quickly. Because like my sister's in a good facility. I don't have to do as much of this anymore. I want to have a some kind of balance.
Yeah, I spoke to Jaron Howell last week about his character, and he mentioned that he feels that Dr. Whitaker kind of gets along best with Dr. King. And you were talking about King trying to make friends as quickly as she can. Would you agree with that statement that out of all the newbies, that those are the two that definitely get along the
I
best?
think so. I think we bond in anxiety. It's one of those like, especially within the third episode when Mr. Milton dies, and I have an anxiety attack because I know, and it wasn't an anxiety attack based on a death because as a doctor I've seen a lot, but it was an anxiety attack based on knowing it was his first death, and just to like have that written in to freak out about knowing what you're going through is I don't know, it's the empathy attachment I think went really fast after that.
Yeah, I do stand by. I think Dr. King has some of the best scenes of the season, and there's some really emotional ones. And one of those is following the tragic death of the young girl in the pool incident. Dr. King is there to talk with the girl's younger sister. What was it like filming that moment, and like how was Dr. King feeling in that very moment as she's trying to process how to communicate with this little girl without letting her own feelings and thoughts and the realities of the world seep into that conversation.
I think the thing that Mel was most focused on is I can't break down. I can't, because even though I'm, highly empathetic, like she's the one going through it, and I have to just be as strong as possible. But also having two parents that are gone, I'm sure I very much know what regret of not being able to say things feels like. And so to have thought for Mel to have thought of how to get that, not closure obviously, but a little bit of some kind of like, I got to tell her what I needed to tell her, was so clearly the first thing on Mel's mind to get that. Yeah, and she's a damn good actor. And it was just kind of like that scene. I was like, yeah, I saw her. And then it was like, okay, all right, I'll step up. Sorry. God. Yeah.
Would you say that, that whole incident is kind of and it's all relative, but would you say it's a kind of a heavier burden on King thanks to her own connection with her sister?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it's what's interesting for a personal tie is that obviously it turned out very differently, thankfully. But this happened to my mom and her sister. My mom sank in a pool and my aunt jumped in after her and grabbed her out, and they were like 5 years old and 10, maybe 10. And so I've having heard that story over and over again, and then being with the what it could have been yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine. Now I want to talk about episode 10, but a big event happens where Dr. Langdon gets kind of kicked out at the very end. And I just, King and Langdon kind of form a close relationship throughout the season. Once, because obviously I assume she'll find out. But what would you can you kind of tease how you think King is going to take in that information, how it's going to make her feel, and will she maybe like kind of start to hate Santos a little bit, or is she the type that's going to understand the reality of the situation and go, that sucks, but he did wrong?
Really good question, but I can totally spoil that Mel never finds out in this.
Wow.
So, which is, I mean, it's realistic. If you have someone midday fired, you're not going to share it with everyone. And so, but yeah, but I definitely miss him. And there's a bunch of times where you could see Mel kind of looking around, hoping to find him to help her or just to be there. Um, yeah,
Interesting. All right. I would have expected it to come up, but that's it's fun to know. Yeah, but that makes sense given the just how the show's structured with the one shift.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Now my last question for you. The show has been renewed for season two, so well, first of all, congratulations on getting to go back to the office. Uh, and then
Hospital.
yeah, office, hospital, hypothetically, what do you personally want to explore with Dr. King going forward in the new season that we haven't seen yet?
That's a really good question. I think a little bit more past of what it's been like and how things have uh, how things that happened around Mel became Mel. Like even if she didn't want to have to do all of these things or struggle in these ways or like thought she would have a clear path, and parents dying, sister needing help, and everything gets in the way.
Yeah.
But also by getting in the way creates a beautiful relationship between her and her sister. So it's kind of like, well, I'd rather have the relationship, but it sucks that this had to happen for that.